Hi everyone, welcome to my late dated Friday follow-up for the week of June 1st to June 5th. A couple reasons for the delay. It was, I think, a pretty turbulent week, both on personal and professional front, and I think kind of globally. I think we've all been rattled in one way, shape, or form or the other by the events of our world as it's changing rapidly and dramatically. And it was my birthday on the 5th, and enjoyed extra time with my kids, and had some fun, and then really have had a hard time summarizing the week. So I kind of just delayed the creating of this, and appreciate you guys participating in the path to take it forward. And so the kind of key outcomes of the week was, pretty on plan to the Monday Momentum post of engaging with pipeline clients as well as existing clients and figuring out how to move Revenue Engine forward, myself forward, use what's been generated with the kind of intense focus on the clear AI supply chain sector and move that forward to add some value to the world, but most specifically my clients and the folks around me. And three of my existing advisory clients have presented very strong interest in expanding their engagements with me and Revenue Engine, and should have some updates on those opportunities next week, and we'll get a little bit more into detail on who they are and what they are, and how we're going to help them. And a big aspect, all those actions are pretty well vectored around MarTech and FinTech, with obviously some connectivity as well to the supply chain action that we've had. And so they're pretty, to use a consulting word, have a lot of synergy. So I'm optimistic that we can add value to multiple stakeholders at the same time, and deliver really powerful results with that. And I think one of the kind of the key elements around all the three teams in particular is they're all in different stages of pre-product market fit. So there's different levels of product, there's different levels of market engagement, different levels of maturity around what's being taken to market and how. So I think that's a interesting cross section for me as the expert in how do you go from pre-product market fit to product market fit, and kind of moving these guys, all those different teams through the evolution of that, and having that cross section, I think will provide some interesting learning and some interesting leverage as stuff working at the later stage can be translated to the earlier stage, and the experiments we were able to run in the earlier stage could also translate up to the later stage stuff. So I think that'll be interesting. Additionally, all these engagements all have kind of some interesting anchors around digital identity, which I'm posting a little bit more about because I think it's extremely important piece of infrastructure as we go into the next phase of our society. Frankly, I think this is kind of an opportunity to comment on it was pretty frankly civil unrest in the United States without question, and I think civil angst, at least in Canada. And I think we're seeing this globally as well. The United Kingdom has definitely shown signs of this as well, as I track some of that a little bit more. So this is, the only thing I have parchments in is political science and history. So I'll actually lean on my education for once. I think the opportunities we've seen, the 20th century was framed by 1913, 1914, which generated, World War I. And I think the next kind of real significant milestone in terms of dates is 1968, 1969. And yes, I skipped over World War I in the Cold War, World War II in the Cold War, because they're outcrops of the I think of the outcome of World War One. In the Cold War, outcome of World War II, but that's a cascading line of events. I'll speak to the kind of World War One. It was very much an outcome of economic dislocation. So the industrialization of the world, creating economic angst of going out of the horse and buggy business and going into the engine business, obviously, which was very early in its evolution at that time. In World War One, very much accelerated and enhanced how that happened, where that happened. Nothing like a good conflict to accelerate technology. But that economic dislocation of urbanization, industrialization, away from agricultural culture and economics, created unbelievable amounts of social angst and societal angst that exploded out in a whole bunch of different ways in the format of World War One. And I think in 1968, 1969, specifically in the United States, but I think the United States at this point and that point was a cultural hegemon that dominated the world. I mean, we're all essentially members of the American empire. Don't like it? Give me a better argument, but we're part of the American empire. And that's, I don't think, very questionable as Canadians. The civil unrest and the near civil war that very nearly occurred on the streets of America, were a response to the Vietnam War and the outward violence of that imperial reach, and society's desire to temper it. But obviously, the civil rights movement was the legacy of that civil unrest in that moment in history, and created and was a response to the need and the desire for structural change in how the society was run. Blatantly a response to Jim Crow and the failure to totally consolidate the win that the actual Civil War of the 19th century in the United States produced, the freeing of the slaves and the preservation of the Union. Taking that pretty much 100 years later, almost on the nose, into the next evolution of African Americans being a accepted, embedded piece of American culture and American society, and moving that forward. And I think we're almost 50 years down the road. 50 years down the road from that. More change is needed, and I think it's a continuation of that civil rights movement, without question, as we see Black Lives Matter speaking directly to systemic racism that's embedded in society, as well as embedded into the infrastructure institutions of our society. But I think the overall explosion of that activity is not dissimilar from 1968, where it was a combination of Vietnam, combination of the baby boomers coming of age, combination of the anxiety of the Cold War and the expansion of the American empire created within its own society, as well as the ones that obviously it was interceding into. And we are in 2020. I think COVID is an incendiary into the overall angst and challenges of our society that we're reacting to, as well as the civil rights movement. And I think this very, very strong dislocation of the economy, and how we're going to operate our institutions, both economic institutions and political institutions, and cultural institutions going forward into the future. We've digitized it, and we have to create infrastructure that responds to the fact that our society is digital, digitally embedded, and use 21st century tools instead of 18th and 19th century tools. 1864 was a long time ago. 1778 was a long time ago. we communicated with horses and quills at those times, not at the speed of the internet. A huge piece of World War I was inability to respond to the communication technologies that had evolved with telegrams. The speed at which global news could move in 1914 was completely disruptive to how society was run, and we're in that similar communication shift here in 2020, and we need to react to it and lead through it. And so there's big opportunities there, and I'll close off my kind of stump speech there, and I'll look forward to talking to you on Monday Momentum. Thanks.